Africa Prime, brought to you by Jamison Select Reserve.
Welcome back. You're watching Africa Prime, the show that brings you insight into pertinent issues on the African continent. Still with me in the studio is Jack van der Merwe, CEO, Gautrain Management Agency. Jack, I have a question for you. Why did they choose you to run the Gautrain?
Well, hopefully I was the best man for the job, but at that stage I was the Director General for Transport and Public Works in Gauteng, and obviously this being a transport project, it was allocated to the department, and I then ran with the project. So I ran with it from '97 until 2004, where we get redeployed after every general election. I was then redeployed to do the train on its own, to do it as a PPP.
Were you always in civil engineering?
Yes.
Right from the beginning. Let's go back. Where did it start? Why did you decide to become a civil engineer? Was that a choice for you, or was it the parents who said, you know what, I have not been able to do this, but I have my own civil engineer?
No, well, I used to love maths. And, you know, the career guidance in the olden days wasn't so good. You either became an engineer or a doctor or a dentist or a teacher or a preacher. And so being good in maths, they said do engineering. So I applied for a bursary in government, and they gave me a bursary for 4 years to study engineering. And I started working in government in '72. So I've been working as a civil engineer in government. And I have mentioned to you that the sum total of my bursary was 2,000 Rand. So for 2,000 Rand bursary, I've worked back 40 years for government.
Absolutely full return on investment there.
Yeah.
Have there been times when you've thought of moving out of that area?
Yes, look, I think I've always been fortunate of working on great projects. When I started off as a young engineer, we did the PWV, the Pretoria Witwatersrand Vereniging Transport Study, where PWV 9 and PWV 2 that we're building today still, where we did the planning for that. So we created a 50-year plan, and it's quite interesting that the MEC Vade has now asked me to head up a team that will do the next 25-year plan. So we're
going to talk about that 25-year plan, because I want to know from you. So 40 years later and still in government, where to now for Jack? Can there be another life outside of government?
No, it's not really a life.
Jack is not looking for a job.
No, it's not government or not. I'm looking for interesting things to do. Whether it's in
they
government
just happen
or
to be inside government.
Yes, no. I've just been fortunate to be in a position when the new government came in power in '94. I was elected to set up a team to create the new department. So we created the structure, the policies, the procedures, the legislation to set up the department. So again, it was a very interesting thing. I don't think people realize what type of excitement there could be in government. If you do it properly, it is there. Let's just do it properly.
I hear many parents saying, you know what, I don't want my children working in government, the sloth and all those kind of things. But of course, there are generalizations, because there is a lot of work that goes into government.
No, there's a big challenge. To do your work properly in government is much more difficult than it is to do your work properly in the private sector. In government, everybody's your stakeholder. Yeah. Every person who pays tax or doesn't pay tax is your boss.
Yeah.
So
now, of course, you, as I said, we can't talk about Jack going for another job, because the challenge that you have is massive. Here we are, we've got 80 kilometers of track down on the ground, and the trains are running. Hopefully, as you said, by December 24, the whole track will be running smoothly. But from there, where to? There are many people who are saying it's great that we've got this infrastructure in place, but it's got gaps. It needs to be tied to the national rail plan. It needs to go through other suburbs to make a meaningful difference in terms of reducing congestion in Joburg. Please give us an outline of where the Gautrain could potentially go from here on.
Well, Gautrain as it stands has got 10 stations, 80 kilometers of track. What we have designed is 4 additional stations within the Gautrain network. So we've actually built the one station already, the substructure. The portion going from Marlborough through to the airport goes over AIC's land, and they have a property development there called Heartlands, where they intend building 26,000 houses. So they've already paid me to do the station. And the moment there's enough people in that development, we will activate the station and start moving it. We've designed a similar station at the depot for the ground between Allendale and Buccleuch, which belongs to the Mia Family Trust. There they have plans which have been approved for 22,000 housing units golf courses, the whole thing. So as soon as that happens, we'll activate that. We have a station planned at the Mint, the SA Mint, just close to Centurion, between Midrand and Centurion.
Okay.
And then we have a station planned at just at the beginning of Pretoria, on the old Proof Blast where the University of Pretoria is, so that you can have a park and ride coming off the N1, the N4.
Okay.
So that will be the way.
Those are additional stations.
Those are additional stations. We are at the moment talking to the contractor to extend our Tambo platforms. At the moment we have 2.5 cars that can park at that can get off at the station. We'd like to make it 4.5, so that will be happen. And then we have already designed a link to go from before you go into Marlborough, just past Lindbro, to turn off to the east and go directly to the airport. So the people living in Tshwane could then go directly to the airport without going in there.
Right.
So that's that. But then, if you look at it wider, we have in our province, we have a massive bus subsidies that we pay. We have, as a result of past policies, we have a spatial distortion in our country. We have people who are poor that lives very far away. The worst case, I think, in our country is the people of the old KwaNdebele. We have people living to the north and the east of Pretoria, which live about 195 kilometers away. And we are busing them in on a daily basis with 900 Patco buses. This is very inefficient. The quality of life is really bad because people they spend 4 hours on the bus in the morning and 4 hours in the evening. So there is a need to extend it to the Moloto. There has been studies done, and what we have in Pretoria, we have a ring rail in Pretoria, existing metro rail ring rail of 26 kilometers with 26 stations. So if we can link the 80 kilometer Gautrain, 26 ring rail stations within Pretoria, and then go 140 kilometers to KwaNdebele, that would give us a system that can work. Then it makes logical sense to go north, to go to Hammanskraal, Winterveld, and then everything to the north of Pretoria, Mamelodi, Mabopane, Soshanguve, and Atteridgeville. So there's a whole demand on that side. On Joburg's southern side, there's obviously Soweto, and everything happening to the south, towards Sedibeng, Sebokeng, all of those areas. In Gauteng, the east-west route, going from Randfontein, Randburg, through Joburg to Boksburg, Benoni, Springs, all of that. It's a section that has very poor road connectivity.
Right.
So that would be the next one. I am on the committee that's looking at building a high-speed link between Johannesburg and Durban.
Yeah.
Looking at a container port being built at the old Durban airport, and bring in containers into that. So there's still a lot of work to be done, but fortunately I'm in the middle of my career now, so I can still give another 20 years most probably.
Jack will be here for another 40 years. But let's talk about the cost effectiveness of what you're talking about, because I mean, for many people to travel from, let's say for instance, from Sandton to go to the airport, the prices that people are paying, sure, for the people in the affluent suburbs, that's money they can pay. How will you make it cost effective for people who are living in the areas that you've just spoken about, who come from perhaps the lowest strata of society?
Yeah, public transport is really in different levels. In our country, we have a ceiling on public transport. We have a total mode of force people. They have no other choice, and they caught into public transport. But their aspiration is to have just enough money to buy a car, to move out of public transport and then clog up the system further.
Sure.
So there has to be a progression that you could go into better and better public transport. And the Gautrain is one of that. But remember, let's first just forget about the airport link, because that's a very special link, and it's comparable to anything in the world.
Agreed.
If you have enough money to buy a ticket to get on the plane, you have enough money to ride on the Gautrain. But if you look at our normal commuter services, our pricing structure is such that it's more expensive than existing public transport, but less expensive than the perceived cost of motoring.
Right.
So if you have enough money to buy a car and get onto the Menskuman or the other routes and clog it up, it'll be in your benefit, cost-wise, to use the train. On top of this, at the end of the year, Nazir Ali will introduce the Gauteng Freeway Improvement Scheme, where you will pay 45 cents per kilometer. So apart from paying your fuel every month, you will get a a nice little letter in the post saying, thank you very much for the use of the freeways. You owe us 1,000 rand.
Yeah. Potentially, how much are you adding in terms of extra kilometers here? And would you have a figure for us how much the whole thing would cost?
Oh, no. Remember,
and what sort of time frame are we talking about here?
No, time frame. Look, we are a developing country. There are massive demands on the fiscus, and you know, Jama Moleketi always said,
including the NHI.
No, sure, but Jama Moleketi always said that governance is not a choice between good and bad projects. It's a choice between good and good projects. So in the end, you have 100 projects which are excellent and viable and economically justifiable, but you only have money for 20. So, and I think that's one of the big criticisms we had on the Gautrain, was not so much what we were spending on Gautrain, but what we could have done if we'd spent it on something else, you know, sure. So what was left out. But when we started this off, Jabo Moleketi was the chairman of the political committee looking after the train, and he said to me, what will it cost? And I said, man, without doing the design, I think 7 billion. And that 7 billion is stuck. And I've been getting a hiding since then. You know, so I'm not going to, but I mean... But
give us a ballpark check.
No, it'll be 100, 200, 300 billion rands worth of work that you have to do.
Over how many years?
No, it'll have to be spread. And again, if I can just go back, it has to be, the numbers have to be there. The people have to show that they aren't aspiring to buy cars to get on the freeway. They must be aspiring to come up into the public transport family. And if that's the case, then it could be, we could start designing in a few years' time, 5 years' time, and start building, depending on how the money looks.
Absolutely. Jack is not going to give me that ballpark figure that I was looking for. That would make me say I've broken news here. But Jack, thanks very much for your time, and thanks for coming through to talk to us about the Gautrain, Africa's first high-speed rail train that is set to grow some more in the years to come. And that's it for this episode of Africa Prime. Join us again next week as we take another in-depth look at pertinent issues and opportunities on the African continent. Until then, I'm Gautrain Management Agency CEO. Goodbye.